Amarjit Chauhan was a man with a vision. He had traveled from India to the United Kingdom, carrying with him the hopes typical of many immigrants seeking a brighter future. He wasn't afraid of hard work. In fact, he seemed to thrive on it. He settled in West London and meticulously built his freight company, CIBA Freight, from the ground up. It became a testament to his dedication, a successful enterprise handling large shipments of vegetables. He was known in his community as a sharp, ambitious businessman, someone who had truly made it. His life was the embodiment of the immigrant dream, a story of perseverance paying off in a new land. He had built more than just a business. He had built a family. Amarjit, his wife Nancy, their two young sons, Devinder and Ravinder, and Nancy's mother, Charanjit Kaur, lived together in Hounslow. They were a close-knit unit, their lives interwoven with the daily rhythms of school, work and community. Nancy was a loving mother, and her own mother, Charanjit, was a comforting presence in the home, helping to care for her grandsons. Their life seemed ordinary, stable, and full of the quiet joys that family brings. They were just like any other family in their neighborhood, living their lives, unaware of the darkness that was gathering on their horizon. Then, in February 2003, they simply vanished. It was a sudden and complete disappearance that left a chilling void. Friends and relatives tried to call, but their phones went unanswered. The family home, usually bustling with activity, fell silent. It was as if they had been erased from existence without a trace. The community was gripped by a mixture of confusion and fear. How could an entire family of 5 spanning 3 generations just disappear? Rumors began to circulate, but no one could fathom what might have happened. The silence was deafening, and a sense of unease settled over everyone who knew them. The initial police response was one of cautious investigation. Missing persons reports were filed, and officers began to piece together the family's last known movements. The story that emerged was unsettling. It was said the family had suddenly decided to return to India, but this explanation felt hollow and unconvincing to those who knew them best. Amarjit was deeply invested in his business. Leaving it all behind without a word seemed completely out of character. As the days turned into weeks, the hope of a simple explanation faded, replaced by a growing dread that something terrible had occurred. The mystery of the Chauhan family had begun. The investigation took a sinister turn when detectives started looking into Amarjit's business dealings. They discovered that something was very wrong at CIBA Freight. Letters, supposedly signed by Amarjit, had been sent out, claiming he was closing his company down. These documents were used to transfer control of his business assets, but the signatures looked forged, and the entire transaction reeked of fraud. It became clear that this was not a simple case of a family going on an unannounced holiday. Someone had been plotting to steal everything Amarjit had worked so hard to build. This was the first concrete clue that foul play was involved. The police started to focus on a man named Kenneth Regan. He was a career criminal with a history of police corruption and drug trafficking. Regan had been trying to get involved with CIBA Freight, seeing it as a perfect front for his illegal activities. He had presented himself as a potential business partner to Amarjit. The police suspected that Regan saw an opportunity not just to use the company, but to take it over entirely. This theory shifted the investigation from a missing persons case to a potential kidnapping and murder inquiry. The focus was now on Regan and his known associates. The detectives dug deeper into Regan's background and his connections. They identified 2 other men, William Hornsey and Peter Rees, as part of Regan's criminal gang. These were not sophisticated white-collar criminals. They were dangerous men with violent pasts. The police believed this group had conspired to lure Amarjit to a meeting, likely under the guise of a business deal. The motive was simple and brutal: greed. They wanted his company, and they were willing to do whatever it took to get it. The investigation was now a manhunt for a ruthless criminal enterprise. The first tragic discovery confirmed everyone's worst fears. On April 23, 2003, Amarjit Chauhan's body was found floating in the sea near Bournemouth Pier. His body had been wrapped in a sheet and bound with tape. The discovery was horrifying and sent a wave of grief through the community. it proved that the family had not gone to India. They had been met with violence. The search for Nancy, her mother, and the two little boys became even more desperate. The police now knew they were not just looking for a gang of fraudsters, they were hunting for cold-blooded killers. With Amarjit's body found, the hunt for Kenneth Reagan intensified. The investigation revealed that Reagan and his accomplices had gone to great lengths to cover their tracks. They had tried to create a false trail, suggesting the Chauhan family had left the country voluntarily. Police uncovered evidence that Reagan had used Amarjit's mobile phone to send text messages to relatives, creating the illusion that he was still alive and well. These messages were a cruel and calculated part of their plan, designed to mislead everyone and buy themselves time. The digital footprints, however, ultimately began to point directly back to the culprits. The deception spanned across borders. Reagan and his gang had attempted to use the family's identities for their own gain. They had tried to sell the Chauhan family home and even attempted to access their bank accounts. The investigation led detectives to track financial transactions and communications that crossed international lines. Reagan himself fled the United Kingdom, first to Spain and then to Belgium, believing he could escape justice. But the police were relentless, working with international law enforcement agencies like Interpol to follow his trail. The world was becoming a smaller place for Reagan and his crew. The breakthrough came when police traced the gang's movements. They discovered that Reagan had used Nancy Chauhan's passport to travel. This was a critical mistake. It directly linked him to her disappearance and provided concrete evidence of identity theft. Detectives also found that the gang had purchased items like ropes and tape, which matched the materials used to restrain Amarjit. Every piece of evidence they uncovered painted a clearer picture of a meticulously planned, yet ultimately flawed, criminal operation. The net was closing in on Reagan and his associates, no matter where they tried to hide. Eventually, the international cooperation paid off. Kenneth Reagan was arrested in Belgium and extradited back to the United Kingdom to face charges. His accomplices, William Hornsey and Peter Rees, were also apprehended. The escape plan had failed. The painstaking work of the detectives, who had followed a complex trail of fraud, deception, and murder across Europe, had brought the prime suspects into custody. The stage was now set for a legal battle that would finally reveal the full, horrifying truth of what happened to the Chauhan family. The long road to justice was about to enter its final, crucial phase. The trial began at the Old Bailey, London's Central Criminal Court, and it was one of the longest and most complex in recent British history. It lasted for over 8 months, as prosecutors meticulously laid out their case against Kenneth Reagan, William Hornsey, and Peter Rees. The courtroom listened in horror as the jury was presented with the grim details of the crime. The prosecution argued that the gang had lured Amarjit to their rented house in Tiverton, Devon, where they tortured him for days to force him to sign over his business. It was a story of unimaginable cruelty driven by pure greed. The evidence presented was overwhelming. The prosecution showed how the men had used Amarjit's phone and forged his signature. They detailed the discovery of the bodies of Nancy and her mother, Charanjit, which were later found in the sea, just like Amarjit. The bodies of the two young boys, Devinder and Ravinder, were tragically never recovered, a fact that added another layer of pain for the surviving relatives. The defense lawyers tried to argue that their clients were small-time crooks, caught up in something they didn't understand. But the evidence of a cold, calculated plot was too strong to ignore. The jury was faced with a chilling narrative of a family systematically eliminated for financial gain. The prosecution's timeline showed how, after killing Amarjit, the gang went to the Chauhan family home and murdered the remaining 4 family members to eliminate all witnesses. The sheer brutality of the act shocked even the most seasoned court observers. After deliberating, the jury delivered their verdict. In 2005, Kenneth Reagan, William Hornsey, and Peter Rees were found guilty of the murders of all 5 members of the Chauhan family. They were sentenced to life in prison. The conviction brought a sense of closure, but it could never undo the immense loss. The Chauhan family case stands as a stark reminder of the depths of human evil. It highlighted the dangers of organized crime and the importance of thorough cross-border police work. Amarjit Chauhan is remembered not just as a victim, but as a dedicated family man and a successful entrepreneur whose dream was violently stolen from him. The memory of the entire family endures as a symbol of innocence lost, and their story remains a significant and cautionary tale in the annals of British crime.